That's so strange when changes, yes indeed. Well, I've seen the hard times and the pressure's been on me. Well, I keep on working like a working man do. I get right back together with a walk all over the field. Give me back my bullets. Put them back where they belong. Ain't fooling around, 'cause I done had my fun. Ain't gonna say no more damage done. Sweet talking people, they would've loved me better too. Well, I drink enough whiskey before the battle ship around. I'm living this game one step ahead, and you will not hear me cry because I do not sing the blues. Give me back my bullets. Put them back where they belong. Ain't fooling around, 'cause I done had my fun. Ain't gonna say no more damage done. Give me back my bullets.
The Corpus Separatum, or the City of Fiume and its district, was a self-governing city-state under the Habsburg monarchy from 1779 to 1918. It was historically a very diverse city-state, welcoming both Protestants and Jews to live among its Catholic majority of Italians and Croats. After nearly 150 years of relative autonomy under the Habsburgs, the city-state was decided by the Paris Peace Conference to be given over to the newly formed Kingdom of Yugoslavia in 1919. After the First World War and the collapse of Austria-Hungary and the rest of the Central Powers. That is, until a group of Italian irredentist legionaries, under the command of the renowned Gabriele D'Annunzio, took control of the city and returned its independent city-state status with the anticipation that it would be given to the Kingdom of Italy. The Fiume endeavor had profound ideological consequences on the history of the world. Fascists looked to Fiume as a battleground for Italian irredentism against the mutilated victory given by the Paris Peace Conference to Italy. Much of the historicity of the Fiume endeavor is stamped with attention to its relation with fascism, seeing D'Annunzio as a proto-fascist, which is partly true but neglects the fact that after 1922, D'Annunzio was opposed to Mussolini and what became of fascism. What is overlooked in the historicity of Fiume is that the Regency of Carnaro was the first experiment in syndicalism. It was the first syndicalist society. The Regency of Carnaro and the later Free State of Fiume was home to artists and radicals of all types. The legionaries were instructed in yoga, judo, and karate, and Vladimir Lenin even sent D'Annunzio a box of caviar. It was the Republic of Labor and Vice. D'Annunzio and his men were the muscle behind this experiment, but little credit is given to the brains behind it, the co-author of the Constitution. This man, the brain, was the national syndicalist thinker and later anti-fascist Alcide de Ambris. His syndicalist ideas permeate the Constitution, while D'Annunzio's poetic flair decorates it. The Charter of Carnaro is above all a syndicalist constitution, and I consider it the most advanced constitution of any socialist republic, despite the fact that it was a short-lived experiment. The reason is that it perfectly fuses socialism with civil society through the Civil Code, escaping both bureaucratic state socialism and bourgeois republicanism. I think that by the end of this video, you will end up agreeing with me. So enough with the history lecture, it is time to deep dive into an engaging and in-depth analysis of the Charter of Carnaro, the world's first and only syndicalist constitution.
Steum e ordina, tum est, euro ego, si splurtus pro nubis, qui contra nos.
The translation reads,
It has been decreed and ordained. I swear, if the Spirit is for us, who can be against us?
The motto of the Constitution makes a reference to Hegel's concept of the spirit, which is made of the subjective, the individual mind, the objective, law, morality, institutions, and the state, and the absolute, art, religion, and philosophy. Basically, what it is saying is that the motive force of history, the spirit, is unfolding towards realizing the idea of Hume. If history and its processes are with us, who can be against us? The saying is both simple and beautiful. Now we will dive into the body of the Constitution, starting with the section titled The Enduring Will of the People.
Fiume, for centuries a free commune of ancient Italy, declared her full and complete surrender to the mother country on October 10, 1918. Her claim is threefold, like the impenetrable armor of Roman legend. Fiume is warden of the Italian marches, the furthest stronghold of Italian culture, the most distant land that bears the imprint of Dante. From century to century, through all vicissitudes, through strife and anguish, Dante's Carnaro has done faithful service to Italy. From her, as from a center of the spiritual life of Italy, has shone forth and still shines forth over shores and islands, from Velasca to Lorana, from Mosciana to Albana, from Virgilio to Lucino, from Churso to Arbe. This is her claim from history. Fiume, as of old Tarsatica, is at the southern end of the Liburnian rampart stretches, thence along the Julian Alps, and is contained entirely within that boundary which science, tradition, and history alike confirm as the sacred confines of Italy. This is her claim from position. Fiume, with all unwavering and heroic courage, overcoming every attack, whether of force or fraud, vindicated her right 2 years ago to choose her own destiny, her own allegiance, on the strength of that just principle declared to the world by some of her unjust adversaries themselves. This is her claim founded on Roman right. In contrast to this threefold claim stands the threefold wrong, iniquity, cupidity, and force to which Italy submits in sorrow, leaving unrecognized and unclaimed the victory that she herself has won. Thus it comes to pass that the inhabitants of the free city of Fiume, faithful to their Latin origin and determined to carry out their lawful decision, are framing a new model for their constitution to suit the spirit of their new life, not intending to limit that constitution to the territory which, under the title Corpus Separatum, was assigned to the Crown of Hungary, but offering it as a free alternative to any of those communities of the Adriatic which desire to break through all hindrances and rise to freedom in the name of a new Italy. Thus, in the name of a new Italy, the people of Fiume, taking their stand on justice and on liberty, swear that they will fight to the utmost with their whole strength against any attempt to separate their land from the mother country, and that they will defend forever the mountain boundary of their country assigned to it by God and by Rome.
This passage is not from the main body of the Charter, which outlines the political and legal structure of the Regency, but from its preamble or declaration of intent. It serves as a justification for Fiume's existence as an independent entity and its ultimate goal of annexation to Italy. It is a masterful piece of political rhetoric, blending historical myth, legal argument, and nationalist fervor to create an irrefutable claim for Italian sovereignty over the city. The core of the passage is the construction of a threefold claim, presented as an impenetrable armor. This trifecta is designed to appeal to different bases of legitimacy. First is the claim from history, the cultural and spiritual legitimacy. The free commune of ancient Italy immediately links Fiume to the medieval Italian city-states such as Venice, Genoa, and Florence, symbols of independence, civic virtue, and Italian culture. Dante's Carnaro. This is perhaps the most potent symbol. By invoking Dante Alighieri, the father of the Italian language and a unifying cultural icon, the text elevates Fiume's struggle from a political dispute to a cultural and almost sacred mission. Dante mentioned the Carnaro Gulf in his Divine Comedy, forever tying the region to the Italian literary canon. Spiritual life of Italy has shone forth. Fiume is framed not as a peripheral outpost, but as a center radiating Italian civilization over a defined geographical area. The listed towns and islands, many with mixed or Slavic populations. This asserts a cultural hegemony over the northeastern Adriatic. The second one is the claim from position, geographical and ethnographic legitimacy, contained entirely within the sacred confines of Italy. This argument relies on the nationalist concept of natural borders. It references the Julian Alps as a God-given boundary, a notion popularized by Italian irredentists. Science, tradition, and history. The text claims that all forms of knowledge, modern science, folk, tradition, and academic history, unanimously support this geographical claim. This leaves no room for dissent. Any opposing view is framed as ignorant or malicious. The third one is the claim from Roman right, the legal and moral legitimacy. The just principle, declared by her unjust adversaries. This is a clever legalistic jab. It refers to U.S. President Woodrow Wilson's principle of self-determination, a cornerstone of the post-World War I peace talks. The Allies, including Italy's sometimes adversaries like Yugoslavia, had promoted this idea. The text argues that Fiume exercised this right through its will, unwavering, and heroic courage on October 10, 1918, its declaration for Italy, and that denying it now is the height of hypocrisy. Roman right. This phrase is loaded. It implies a right that is ancient, supreme, and inherent, harkening back to the legal foundations of Western civilization, of which Italy sees itself as the heir. The text creates a powerful dichotomy by juxtaposing Fiume's righteous threefold claim with the threefold wrong of its opponents. Iniquity, cupidity, and force. These are the antitheses of Fiume's virtues. Iniquity, injustice, a moral failure. Cupidity, greed, suggesting the Allies, particularly France and Britain, are motivated by secret treaties and imperial deals rather than justice. Force, pure aggression, stripping away any legal or moral pretext, painting Yugoslavia as a brute aggressor. Italy submits in sorrow. This is crucial. It absolves the Italian government, which was negotiating with the Allies and failing to support D'Annunzio's occupation, of betrayal. Instead, it frames Italy as a victim, a sorrowful mother being robbed of her rightful child. This allows D'Annunzio's legionaries to see themselves as more loyal to the true spirit of Italy than the government in Rome. The text reveals that the project is far more ambitious than just the city of Fiume. Not intending to limit to the territory, the goal is not to restore the old Hungarian-administered Corpus Separatum, but to expand. A free alternative to any of those communities of the Adriatic. This positions Fiume under D'Annunzio as the nucleus of a new political model that could liberate other Italian-speaking or claimed territories along the Dalmatian coast from Yugoslav rule. It's a direct challenge to the Treaty of Saint-Germain, which had assigned these areas to Yugoslavia. In the name of a new Italy, this is the ultimate goal. The new Italy is not the liberal, parliamentary state based in Rome, but a revolutionary, visionary, and heroic state born from the direct action of its most passionate citizens. There are also 4 types of literary devices used in this text. The elevated poetic language. The language is not that of a dry legal document. It is bombastic, lyrical, and dramatic, full of historical echoes. This is pure D'Annunzio. The poet-warrior using words as weapons. The religious and sacred imagery. Sacred confines, spiritual life, impression of Dante, assigned by God and by Rome. This transforms a territorial dispute into a holy crusade. Repetition and triads. The use of threefold structures, claim, wrong, armor, is a classic rhetorical device for emphasis and memorability. Direct address and oath. The concluding swear, "they will fight to the utmost," is a performative speech act. It doesn't just describe an intention. It is the act of commitment itself, binding the community together. This excerpt from the Charter of Carnaro is far more than just a simple statement of territorial claim. It is a manifesto for a revolutionary, nationalist, and anti-liberal political movement. It masterfully weaves together historical myth, geographical determinism, and the modern principle of self-determination to create a powerful and emotionally resonant cause. It paints Fiume's struggle in epic terms, positioning it as the vanguard of a new Italy, destined to overthrow the old order of diplomacy and compromise. Now we will move on to the section of the Constitution called the Basis.
1. The sovereign people of Hume, in the strength of their unassailable sovereignty, take as a center of their free state the Corporatist Separatum, with all its railways and its harbor. But, on the west, they are determined to maintain contact with the mother country. So on the east, they are not prepared to renounce their claim to a frontier more just and more secure than might be assigned to them by the next happening in the give and take of politics, or by any future treaties which they might be able to conclude with the rural and maritime communes after the proclamation of an open port and of generous statutes.
This article establishes the territorial foundation of the Regency of Carnaro. It is a masterful piece of political and strategic declaration that does two seemingly contradictory things simultaneously. It defines a minimum viable state while explicitly announcing an expansionist ambition. It is not a statement of fixed borders, but a claim to dynamic and evolving sovereignty.
2. The Italian province of Carnaro is made up of the district of Fiume, of the islands, traditionally Venetian, which have declared by vote that they will share her fortunes, and of any neighboring communities which, after making a genuine application for admission, have been welcomed fraternally and in due legal form.
This clause defines the territorial composition of the Italian province of Carnaro. It is a masterful and strategic definition that is simultaneously retrospective, prospective, and ideological. It grounds the state in a concrete reality while leaving its borders deliberately open-ended to facilitate expansion, all under the umbrella of a powerful nationalist narrative. Welcomed fraternally and in due legal form. This phrase perfectly captures the blend of D'Annunzio's style. Fraternally evokes the spirit of revolution, brotherhood, and passionate unity, the emotional, charismatic core of the enterprise. In due legal form, immediately grounds that passion in the process, suggesting that the new state, for all its revolutionary fervor, intends to be a lawful and orderly entity.
3. The Italian province of Carnaro is a state chosen by the people which has for basis the power of productive labor, and for constitution the widest and most varied forms of autonomy, such as were in use during the 4 centuries of our glorious communal period.
This clause defines the essential nature of the state D'Annunzio is creating. It is a rejection of the contemporary political orders of both liberal democracy and Bolshevism, proposing instead a syncretic third way. It blends radical left-wing economics, such as productive labor, as the basis, with a romantic, right-wing nostalgia for an idealized Italian past, the glorious Communal period, all founded on the principle of popular sovereignty. This single sentence from the Charter of Carnaro is a dense and powerful manifesto. It successfully creates a new political identity by synthesizing the modern revolutionary principle of popular sovereignty and syndicalist economics with a deeply traditionalist and nationalist vision of history. It rejects the existing world order and proposes a radical alternative that is both forward-looking and backward-glancing. It is not just a description of a state's function, but a declaration of its soul.
Thea. The province recognizes and confirms the sovereignty of all citizens without distinction of sex, race, language, class, or religion. But above and beyond every other right, she maintains the right of the producer, abolishes or reduces excessive centralization in constitutional powers, and subdivides offices and powers so that by their harmonic interplay, communal life may grow more vigorous and abundant.
This article establishes the fundamental principles of citizenship and state structure within the Italian Regency of Carnaro. It performs a delicate and radical balancing act. It begins with a sweeping declaration of universal, liberal rights, but immediately subordinates them to a new, hierarchical principle based on class and function, the producer. It then outlines a political model that is both decentralized and designed for intense, harmonic collective action. This is a classic blueprint for a syndicalist state. This article is a masterpiece of ideological synthesis. It begins with a nod to Enlightenment values to attract broad support, but its true purpose is to announce their supersession by a new, functional order. It replaces the messy, conflict-ridden politics of liberal individualism with a vision of society as a perfectly engineered machine or a musical composition, where every citizen producer has a designated part to play in creating a powerful and abundant whole.
5. The province protects, defends, preserves all popular rights and liberties, ensuring international order by justice and discipline, seeks to bring back a time of well-ordered happiness, which should bring new life to a people delivered at last from government of lies and oppression. Her constant aim is to raise the status of her citizens and to increase their prosperity, so that the citizenship shall be recognized by foreigners as a title of high honor, as it was in former days under the law of Rome.
This article serves as a mission statement for the Regency of Carnaro, outlining its dual nature. It is both a utopian promise of a future paradise and an authoritarian blueprint for achieving it. It juxtaposes the language of liberty and well-being with the concepts of discipline, order, and a hierarchical notion of citizenship, all framed within a mythologized Roman past. It perfectly illustrates the blend of revolutionary syndicalism and nationalist mysticism that characterized D'Annunzio's experiment. Article 5 of the Charter of Carnaro is far more than a list of principles. It is a recruitment poster and a declaration of intent. It offers a seductive vision, a utopia that breaks from the failed governments of the present to restore the glory of the ancient past. It promises citizens not just rights, but honor, not just liberty, but a purposeful and prosperous life, within a well-disciplined, powerful new community. In doing so, it lays the groundwork for a political model where individual freedoms are willingly surrendered to the collective, charismatic leadership, and the thrilling, disciplined pursuit of national greatness.
6. All citizens of the state of both sexes are equal and feel themselves equal in the eye of the law. The exercise of their constitutional rights can be neither diminished nor suppressed except by public trial and solemn condemnation.
This article articulates two core interconnected principles of the Feumian state: absolute equality before the law and robust due process. It is a strikingly modern and liberal declaration that seems to stand in stark contrast to the more authoritarian and corporatist elements found elsewhere in the Charter. However, its purpose is deeply strategic, serving both as a revolutionary beacon and as a necessary guarantee within the Charter's unique ideological framework. Article 6 of the Charter of Carnaro is not a contradiction, but a necessary component of its revolutionary synthesis. It provides the essential liberal framework of equality and legal security upon which the more radical corporatist and authoritarian superstructure could be built. It was both a genuine ideological commitment to progressive principles, particularly regarding gender equality, and a calculated piece of political theater designed to legitimize D'Annunzio's experiment as the vanguard of a new, more just world order. It represents the moment where the old language of rights was co-opted into the service of a new and ultimately a liberal political project.
7. Fundamental liberties, freedom of thought and of the press, the right to hold meetings and to form associations are guaranteed to all citizens by the Constitution. Every form of religion is permitted and respected and allowed to erect its own places of worship, but no citizen may allege his creed or the rights of his religion as a reason for withdrawing from the fulfillment of duties prescribed by the law. Misuse of statutory liberty, when its purpose is illegal and when it disturbs the public peace, may be punished as provided by the law, but the law must in no way transgress the principle of liberty.
Article 7 guarantees a suite of fundamental liberal freedoms, but immediately subjects them to significant limitations. It promises liberty, but not license. The state grants rights with one hand while reserving the authority to curtail them with the other, establishing a clear hierarchy where the duties of the citizen to the collective and the public peace ultimately supersede individual freedoms. The syndicalist model of the Charter, where the state was built around corporations and unions, required the freedom to form associations. This right was the bedrock of its entire political structure. The Charter grants freedom of religion and conscience, but limits this conscience to belief and ritual, and does not extend it to the rejection of the fulfillment of duties. This was likely a direct challenge to the political power of the Catholic Church, a common stance among Italian nationalists and revolutionaries, like Garibaldi, who saw the Church as a reactionary force opposed to a unified modern Italy. It ensures that the state faces no competing source of loyalty.
8. The Constitution guarantees to all citizens of both sexes primary instruction in well-lighted and healthy schools, physical training in open-air gymnasiums, well-equipped, paid with a fair minimum living wage, assistance in sickness, infirmity, and involuntary unemployment. Old age pensions, the enjoyment of property legitimately obtained, inviolability of the home, habeas corpus, compensation for injuries in case of judicial errors or abuse of power.
Article 8 of the Charter of Carnaro is arguably its most enduring and influential contribution. It represents a bold and early vision of the 20th century welfare state. It understands that citizenship in a modern industrial world involves not just political rights, but also economic security and social guarantees. However, this generosity has a purpose. These rights are not just gifts. They are tools for building a specific kind of society, a healthy, strong, disciplined, and loyal populace utterly dependent on and integrated with the state. The citizen, from cradle to grave, is wrapped in the care and control of the benevolent state. This created a model for a totalitarian democracy, where the state secures the allegiance of the masses not through terror, but through extensive provision.
9. The state does not recognize the ownership of property as an absolute and personal right, but regards it as one of the most useful and responsible of social functions. No property can be reserved to anyone in unrestricted ownership, nor can it be permitted that an indolent owner should leave his property unused or should dispose of it badly, to the exclusion of anyone else. The only legitimate title to the possession of the means of production and exchange is labor. Labor alone is the custodian of that which is by far the most fruitful and profitable to the general well-being.
This article clarifies that the property norms of the state are based on the mutualist principle of occupancy and use, a socialist update on the Lockean concept of the labor theory of property. This notion of property ownership is fundamentally Proudhonian. Article 9 fundamentally redefines the concept of property. It transitions the right of property from an absolute individual right, the basis of 19th century liberalism, to a conditional social function. This transforms ownership from a matter of private privilege into a public duty, with the state acting as the ultimate arbiter of whether that duty is being fulfilled. It is a blueprint for a state-controlled productivist economy. Article 9 is not a mere policy proposal. It is a declaration of economic war on the old order. It seeks to replace the capitalist ethic of individual ownership with a collectivist, productivist ethic where the state is the ultimate economic authority. It provides a theoretical justification for the state to intervene deeply in the economy, direct investment, punish unproductive elements, and organize all economic life around the goal of national power and general well-being.
10. The harbor, station, railway lines comprised in the territory of Fiume are the inalienable and incontestable property of the state in perpetuity. By a statute of the free port, the full and free use of the harbor for commerce, industry, and navigation is guaranteed to foreigners as to natives, in perfect equality of good treatment, in immunity from exorbitant harbor dues, and from any injury to person or goods.
Article 10 establishes a dual principle: absolute state control over Fiume's critical transportation infrastructure, and a commitment to radical economic liberalism in its use. It ensures that the state's most valuable assets cannot be alienated while simultaneously guaranteeing that their benefits are open to all, making Fiume a natural hub for international commerce. This reflects a pragmatic understanding of the city's raison d'etre and a strategic effort to secure its viability and independence. Article 10 of the Charter of Carnaro is a masterstroke of pragmatic statecraft. It understands that the true sovereignty requires both the power to exclude, inalienable control, and the wisdom to include, free port policy. It seeks to build a fortress, but then leaves all the gates open to friendly trade. This model of state-controlled infrastructure serving as a platform for hyper-liberal economic activity was decades ahead of its time, prefiguring the economic models of modern city-states like Singapore and Dubai. It reveals that beneath the poetical bombast and nationalist fervor, the authors of the Charter possessed a keen understanding of real politics and economics, crafting a viable, self-interested strategy for Fiume's survival as an independent entity.
11. A National Bank of Carnaro under state supervision is entrusted with the issue of paper money and with all operations concerning credit. A law for this purpose will decide methods and regulations to be followed and will point out the rights, functions, and responsibilities of the banks already in operation in the territory and of those that may be hereafter founded there.
Article 11 establishes a key tenet of economic nationalism: state sovereignty over the financial system. It mandates the creation of a central bank with a monopoly on currency and issuance and overarching authority over credit, while pragmatically acknowledging the need to regulate, rather than immediately abolish, existing private banks. This reflects the Charter's blend of radical syndicalist theory and pragmatic state building. Article 11 of the Charter of Carnaro is far more than a technical banking regulation. It is a declaration of economic independence and a key mechanism for enacting the Charter's radical social vision. By seizing control of money and credit, the state gains the leverage to direct the entire economy towards its goal of a well-ordered happiness based on productive labor. It demonstrates a sophisticated understanding that political revolution requires a financial revolution, but that the latter must be managed with a degree of pragmatism to avoid immediate collapse. In its blend of radical intent and gradualist method, it provides a clear blueprint for how a revolutionary state can seek to capture and command the economy.
12. All the citizens of both sexes have the full right to choose and carry on any industry, profession, art, or craft. Industry started or supported by foreign capital and all concessions to foreigners will be regulated by liberal legislation.
Article 12 establishes a dual economic principle: unrestricted economic liberty for its citizens coupled with conditional and regulated access for foreign capital. It promotes a form of economic nationalism that is internally libertarian but externally guarded, ensuring that the benefits of foreign investment are harvested without compromising the state's sovereignty or the primacy of its own citizens. Article 12 of the Charter of Carnaro is a sophisticated and pragmatic economic policy statement. It reveals a government that is ideologically driven yet practical, seeking to cultivate a vibrant and free internal economy while strategically managing its engagement with the outside world to protect its hard-won sovereignty. It perfectly encapsulates the Fume experiment spirit. Radically libertarian for the in-group of the chosen citizens, but fiercely guarded and sovereign against the out-group of foreign powers. This delicate balance between open opportunity and defensive regulation is a hallmark of economic national strategies that would become increasingly common throughout the 20th century.
13. Three elements unite to inspire and control the regulation, progress, and growth of the community: the citizens, the corporations, the communes.
Article 13 announces the abolition of the traditional liberal state based on individual citizens and geographic representation. In its place, it proposes a tripartite syndical state where political life is organized by function and community. This model is designed to harmonize society by integrating its constituent parts, the individual, their economic role, and their local community, into a single, cohesive whole directed by the national will. The concept of the corporation is directly borrowed from Syndicalist theory, particularly from the ideas of Alcide d'Ambrис, the Charter's co-author. Syndicalists believe the state should be run by trade unions, or syndicates. The philosophy is organic, viewing the state as a living body, the whole, made of functioning organs, the corporations, communes, and citizens. The health of the whole is paramount, and the parts must work together without conflict. Article 13 is not merely a description of a government structure. It is the architectural blueprint for a total political revolution. It aims to dismantle the political world of the 19th century and replace it with a new, functional, and holistic system designed to eliminate social conflict and mobilize the entire nation towards collective greatness. It is the ultimate expression of the Charter's ambition to serve as a model for a new Italy and a new type of society, making it one of the most influential and ominous political documents of the 20th century.
14. There are three articles of belief which take precedence of all others in the province and the federated communes. Life is a good thing. It is fit and right that man, reborn to freedom, should lead a life that is noble and serious. A true man is he who, day by day, renews the dedication of his manhood to his fellow men. Labor, however humble and obscure, if well done, adds to the beauty of the world.
Article 14 transcends mere law to establish a state-sponsored civic religion. It presents three core tenets designed to cultivate a specific type of citizen: one who embraces life with heroic vitality, practices a morality of social duty over individual rights, and finds dignity and purpose in work. This represents the ideological engine meant to power the political machine described in the previous articles. This is a classic tactic of revolutionary regimes seeking to replace traditional religion with a secular faith in the state, such as the cult of reason in the French Revolution, or the cult of the supreme being. It provides a sense of higher purpose and transcendence. For D'Annunzio and his followers, the pre-war world was decadent, materialistic, and weak. This creed is offered as an antidote, a call to a more serious, virile, and purposeful way of life. Article 14 of the Charter of Carnaro is perhaps the most effective distillation of its revolutionary spirit. It moves beyond governing mechanisms to attack the very soul of the citizen, seeking to remold it in the image of the state. It is a powerful and seductive vision, offering purpose, dignity, and belonging in exchange for the complete sublimation of the individual to the collective. By making the state the source of meaning and defining virtue as service to it, the Charter lays the groundwork for the totalitarian political religions that would define the coming decades. It is not a law, it is a commandment for a new age. Now we will move on to the section called The Citizens.
The following persons have the rank of citizens of Carnaro. All citizens now on the register of the Free City of Fiume. All citizens of the federated communes. All persons who have made application for citizenship and who have attained it by a legal decree.
Article 15 establishes the legal criteria for citizenship in the Italian Regency of Carnaro. It creates a three-tiered system that acknowledges the current reality, provides for future expansion, and firmly anchors political rights in a legal process controlled by the state. It is a foundational act of sovereignty, defining who belongs to the new political community and who does not.
16. Citizens are invested with all civil and political rights as soon as they reach the age of 20. Without distinction of sex, they become electors and eligible for all careers.
Article 16 defines the acquisition of full political rights within the Regency of Carnaro. It is revolutionary for two primary reasons. It establishes a single, relatively low age of political majority, and it mandates absolute political equality between man and woman. This represents a dramatic break from the norms of early 20th century Europe and reflects the unique synthesis of revolutionary syndicalism and avant-garde modernism that characterized D'Annunzio's experiment. Article 16 of the Charter of Carnaro is not a minor procedural detail, it is a cornerstone of its revolutionary identity. By championing youth and gender equality, it sought to create a truly total state where every adult citizen was actively integrated into the political project. Not as a sovereign individual in a liberal sense, but as a dedicated cell in the national body. It stands as a testament to the revolutionary avant-garde and syncritic energy of the Fiume experiment, a fleeting attempt to forge a new type of polity that was both fiercely totalitarian and strikingly progressive in its social policies.
17. Those citizens shall be deprived of political rights by formal sentence, who are condemned by the law, defaulters with regard to military service for the defense of the territory, defaulters in the payment of taxes, incorrigible parasites on the community if they are not incapacitated from labor by age or sickness.
Article 17 establishes the conditions for disenfranchisement, the loss of political rights. It identifies four categories of citizens who can be formally stripped of their rights, framing citizenship not as an innate right but as a conditional privilege earned through obedience, sacrifice, and productive contribution to the community. This clause embodies the Charter's core principle of a duty-based rather than rights-based citizenship. The war on parasites and the enforcement of the duty to work is a core syndicalist and socialist demand, here turned into state policy. Article 17 is the enforcement mechanism for the Charter's entire ideological project. It reveals that the much celebrated rights and freedoms are not universal or inalienable. They are privileges granted by the state to those who meet its stringent criteria of obedience, sacrifice, and productivity. It completes the image of the ideal Carnaro citizen, the armed, tax-paying, productive worker. More ominously, it defines their opposites, the criminal, the traitor, the thief, and the parasite, all of whom are deemed unfit to be part of the political community. In doing so, it provides a legal and philosophical justification for the exclusion and persecution of undesirable elements. Now we will move on to the section titled The Corporations.
18. The state represents the aspiration and effort of the people as a community towards material and spiritual advancement. Those only are full citizens who give their best endeavor to add to the wealth and strength of the state. These truly are one with her in her growth and development. Whatever be the kind of work a man does, whether of hand or brain, art or industry, design or execution, he must be a member of one of the 10 corporations who receive from the commune a general direction as to the scope of their activities, but are free to develop them in their own way and to decide among themselves as to their mutual duties and responsibilities.
Article 18 of the Charter of Carnaro is a very influential clause. It moves beyond declaring rights and principles to outlining a concrete socio-economic system designed to achieve a totalitarian utopia. It redefines freedom not as individual liberty, but as the freedom of functional groups to manage their affairs within a framework entirely dictated by the state. The citizen finds their dignity and political identity not in individual rights, but in their productive role within the corporate whole. This model of a state that is at once organic, spiritual, productivist, and syndicalist. It is the complete fusion of the individual into the collective, all in the name of material and spiritual advancement.
19. The first corporation comprises the wage earners of industry, agriculture, and commerce, small artisans and small landholders who work their own farms, employing little other labor and only occasionally. The second corporation includes all members of the technical or managerial staff in any private business, industrial or rural, with the exception of the proprietors or partners in the business. In the third are united all persons employed in commercial undertakings who are not actually operatives. Here again, proprietors are excluded. In the fourth are associated together all employers engaged in industrial, agricultural, or commercial undertakings, so long as they are not merely owners of the business, but, according to the spirit of the new Constitution, prudent and sagacious masters of industry. The fifth comprises all public servants, state and communal employees of every rank. In the sixth are to be found the intellectual section of the people, studious youth and its leaders, teachers in the public schools, and students in colleges and polytechnics, sculptors, painters, decorators, architects, musicians, all those who practice the arts, scenic or ornamental. The seventh includes all persons belonging to the liberal professions who are not included in the former categories. The eighth is made up of the cooperative societies of production and consumption, industrial and agricultural, and can only be represented by the self-chosen administrators of the societies. The ninth comprises all workers on the sea. The 10th has no special trade or register or title. It is reserved for the mysterious forces of progress and adventure. It is a sort of votive offering to the genius of the unknown, to the man of the future, to the hope for idealization of daily work, to the liberation of the spirit of man beyond the panting effort and bloody sweat of today. It is represented in the civic sanctuary by a kindled lamp bearing an ancient Tuscan inscription of the epoch of the communes that calls up an ideal vision of human labor. Fatica senza fatica.
Article 19 categorizes the entire productive population of the state into 10 functional corporations, guilds or syndicates. This structure is designed to replace class-based conflict with functional collaboration, organizing society not by geography or wealth, but by economic role. The list culminates in a deeply symbolic and mystical 10th corporation, revealing the blend of hard-nosed syndicalism and poetic idealism that defines the entire charter. Article 19 is the detailed architectural plan for the corporate state. It reveals the charter not as a mere list of ideals, but as a practical, though revolutionary, governing blueprint. It shows how the Fume experiment sought to translate its lofty principles into a working system of representation and economic organization. Most importantly, the 10th corporation encapsulates the entire project spirit. It demonstrates that the goal was not just a more efficient or fairer economy, but the creation of a new type of society and a new kind of human being, one where labor was transcended into something spiritual and heroic. The 10 corporations are ordered like so. 1. Wage earners and small producers. This is the largest group, encompassing the industrial proletariat, agricultural laborers, and the petit bourgeois of small artisans and family farmers. Significantly, it includes those who employ little other labor, drawing a line between a small, virtuous landholder and a larger capitalist landowner. 2. Technical and managerial staff. This is a crucial category. It includes engineers, foremen, and managers, the brain workers of industry. They are distinguished from both the manual workers below them and the owners above them. This recognizes their vital role and gives them their own political voice. 3. Commercial employees. This covers white-collar workers in commerce, clerks, accountants, salespeople who are not owners. Again, it separates employees from employers. 4. Employers, or masters of industry. This is a highly ideological category. It does not include passive owners or investors. It is only for those who are actively engaged as prudent and sagacious masters. This enforces the principle from Article 9 that ownership is a social function. An idle parasite owner would not qualify for this corporation and would thus be politically marginalized. 5. Public servants. Includes all state and communal employees, from bureaucrats to policemen. This ensures the state apparatus itself has representation within the system it administers. 6. Intellectuals and artists. An incredibly broad and telling category. It yokes together students, teachers, artists, and architects. This reflects the Denuncian belief that culture and the life of the mind are forces of production as vital as physical labor. The state is to be a patron and organizer of culture. 7. The liberal professions. A catch-all for lawyers, doctors, etc., not covered elsewhere. 8. Cooperative societies. This grants a direct political voice to cooperatives, which were seen by syndicalists and socialists as the embryonic form of post-capitalist economy. It privileges collective ownership and management over traditional capitalist models. 9. Workers on the sea, a distinct category for sailors, fishermen, and port workers, acknowledging the supreme importance of the maritime economy to a port city like Fiume. 10. The mysterious forces of progress and adventure. This is pure denuncio. It has no members, no roster, no specific economic function. It is a poetic and mystical category reserved for the future, the men of the future, the hope for idealization of daily work, the spirit, the liberation of the spirit of man, the unknown, the genius of the unknown. The symbolism here is that it is represented by a lit lamp with a Tuscan inscription, Fatica senza fatica, or toil without toil, or labor without labor.
20. Each corporation is a legal entity and is so recognized by the state. Chooses its own councils, makes known its decisions in an assembly of its own, dictates its own terms, its own decrees and rules, exercises autonomy under the guidance of its own wisdom and experience, provides for its own needs and for management of its own funds, collecting from its members a contribution in proportion to their wages, salary, business profits, or professional income, defends in every way its own special interests and strives to improve its status, aims at bringing to perfection the technique of its own art or calling, seeks to improve the quality of work carried out and to raise the standard of excellence and beauty, enrolls the humblest workers, endeavoring to encourage them to do the best work, recognizes the duty of mutual help, decides as to pensions for sick and infirm members, chooses for itself symbols, emblems, music, songs, and prayers, founded its own rules and ceremonies, assists as handsomely as it can in providing enjoyment for the commune, for us anniversary deities, and sports by land and sea, venerates its dead, honors its elders, and celebrates its heroes.
Article 20 grants each corporation extensive autonomy and legal personhood, making them far more than just trade unions or state committees. They are conceived as self-contained, self-financing, and self-perpetuating communities within the larger state, responsible for every aspect of their members' professional and social lives. This creates a model of radical decentralization and functional democracy, but one that remains ultimately subordinate to the state's overarching goals. The corporations are essentially a state within a state. The corporations are designed to be the primary focus of a citizen's loyalty and identity. Your life, your job, your social safety net, your community, your rituals would be encompassed by your corporation. This seeks to create a truly organic society where every individual is integrated into a functional whole. Article 20 reveals the Charter of Carnaro not as a blueprint for a liberal state, but for a syndicalist and totalizing community. It aims to dissolve the isolated individual into the corporate collective, which in turn is subordinated to the state. The corporation is granted immense power over its members' lives, but in exchange it offers security, identity, purpose, and even transcendence through the beauty of work. This article completes the vision of a society where the political, economic, social, and spiritual spheres are entirely fused, leaving no aspect of human life outside the purview of the state and its functional organs. It is a vision of a society that is intensely communal, offering belonging at the expense of individual liberty.
21. The relations between the government of the province and the corporations and between the different corporations are regulated by the methods defined in the statutes, which regulate the relations between the central province and the affiliated communes and between the several communes. The members of each corporation form a free electoral body for choosing representatives on the Council of Governors, provisory. The first place in public ceremonies is assigned to the councils of the corporations and their banners.
Article 21 integrates the autonomous corporations, outlined in Article 20, into the formal political structure of the state. It does three key things. It establishes a legal framework for inter-entity relations, it makes the corporations the electoral base for the national government, and it grants them the highest symbolic honor in public life. This completes the vision of a corporate state, where functional economic groups replace geographic constituencies as the basis of political representation. Article 21 is the constitutional linchpin of the Charter of Carnaro. It transforms the state from a theoretical idea into a working political machine. By making the corporations the electoral bodies for the national government, it ensures that the state is run by and for the producers, actualizing the Syndicalist dream. By granting them the place of highest honor, it sells this new system to the people through powerful spectacle and symbolism. This creates a vision of a state that is organically whole. Every citizen has a place, every function is represented, and all work together in harmonic interplay under the guidance of the central government. It is a powerful, seductive, and ultimately totalitarian vision that seeks to organize the entire nation like a single, efficient, and beautiful machine, with each cog, the citizen, finding meaning through their designated role in the greater whole. Now we will move on to the section titled The Communes.
22. The ancient potere normativo will be re-established for all communes, the right of making laws subject to the common law. They exercise all powers not specially assigned by the Constitution to the judicial, legislative, and executive departments of the province.
Article 22 establishes a system of decentralized governance based on the principle of subsidiarity. It grants all affiliated communes, towns, and cities to a broad right of self-government, allowing them to legislate on local matters while simultaneously ensuring the supremacy of the central provincial government. This reflects a deliberate attempt to revive a medieval Italian political model within a modern revolutionary framework. The Regency of Carnaro was a federal structure for a mini-state. The Regency of Carnaro was a tiny entity, yet it designed a federal system for itself. This was not for administrative efficiency, but for ideological and expansionist reasons. It was ideological. It embodied the syndicalist and anarchist preference for decentralized power and local autonomy. It was expansionist. This structure was designed to make it easy for other affiliated communes along the Adriatic coast, the ones mentioned in Article 2, to join the Carnaro Federation. They could retain their local identity and laws while accepting the overarching authority of Fiume. It was a model for a potential league or federation of Italian-speaking communes.
23. Each commune has full sanction to draw up its own code of municipal laws, derived from its own special customs, character, and inherited energy, and from its new national life. But each commune must apply to the province for ratification of its statutes, which the commune will give. When these statutes have been approved, accepted, and voted on by the people, they can be amended only by the will of a real majority of the citizens.
Article 23 grants individual communes the power to create their own municipal statutes celebrating local identity and custom. However, it firmly subordinates this autonomy to the ultimate authority of the central provincial government, which must ratify all local statutes. This creates a system of controlled decentralization, where local diversity is permitted and even encouraged, but only within strict boundaries set by the revolutionary state. Article 23 is a masterclass in political design. It creates a system that is both flexible and rigid, democratic and authoritarian. It offers communes a powerful sense of agency and self-determination, which would be highly effective in securing their buy-in for the Carnaro project. However, it retains a decisive veto power for the central government, ensuring that all legislation, even at the local level, serves the revolutionary ideals of the state. This achieves the Charter's goal of harmonic interplay. The communes sing their own distinct melodies, but they all play from a score approved by the central conductor and with the same overarching symphony.
The communes have the acknowledged right to make settlements, agreements, and treaties between themselves, administrative and legislative, but they are required to submit them to be examined by the central executive power. If the central power considers that such settlements, agreements, or treaties controvert the spirit of the Constitution, it sends them up for final decision to the Court of Administration. If the court declares them to be illegal and invalid, the central executive of the province makes provision for their cancellation.
Article 24 grants communes the right to form intermunicipal agreements, but establishes a robust mechanism for central oversight, specifically through judicial review. It creates a system where local initiative is encouraged but is ultimately subordinate to the central government's interpretation of the Constitution's spirit. This ensures that the autonomy of communes does not threaten the unity or the ideological purity of the broader state. Article 24 is a masterstroke of political engineering. It creates a system that is both dynamic and stable, flexible and controlled. It appeals to local pride and initiative by granting communes the prestigious right to make treaties, thus securing their buy-in for the federal project. Simultaneously, it establishes an unbreakable chain of central control, from executive review to judicial oversight to executive enforcement, that ensures every single agreement ultimately serves the interests and ideology of the central revolutionary state. This mechanism ensures that the harmonic interplay between communes does not ever become a dissonant challenge to the conductor of the orchestra. It is the definitive answer to how a state can be both fiercely decentralized in administration and ruthlessly centralized in ultimate power.
25. If order within the commune should be disturbed by faction, rebellion, or plot, or by any other form of craft or violence, if the dignity or integrity of a commune should be injured or menaced by the transgression of another, the executive of the province would intervene as mediator or peacemaker. If the communal authorities agreed in requesting it to do so, if a third of the citizens exercising political rights in the commune itself should make the request.
Article 25 establishes a protocol for provincial intervention in a commune's internal affairs. It positions the central executive as a mediator and peacemaker, but only under specific conditions of local request or proven crisis. This creates a system designed to resolve internal conflicts without resorting to automatic, heavy-handed centralization, thereby respecting communal autonomy while ensuring the stability of the broader state. Article 25 is a testament to the political sophistication of the Charter's authors. It is not a simplistic centralizing measure, but a nuanced safety valve. It understands that decentralization carries risks by creating a clear, legally defined pathway for intervention that requires local invitation, either from authorities or citizen minority. It mitigates those risks without destroying local freedom. The central government becomes a reserve power, a force for stability that remains in the background, only stepping in when the local system has clearly broken down and requested aid. This model allows the Charter to boast of true communal autonomy while having a contingency plan to ensure that autonomy does not become a threat to the state's very existence. It completes the federal structure by providing a peaceful, constitutional mechanism for resolving the inevitable conflicts that arise in any decentralized system, ensuring the harmonic interplay of the state is maintained.
26. The following functions belong especially to the communes: to provide for primary instruction, according to the regulations laid down by the Central Education Authority, to nominate the communal judges, to appoint and maintain the communal police, to levy taxes, to contract loans within the territory of the province or even outside of it, provided that the sanction of the central government shall have been obtained. But this will not be granted except in case of absolute necessity.
Article 26 assigns a specific set of core governmental functions to the communes, creating a clear division of power between the local and provincial levels. These powers cover justice, education, public order, and taxation, the essential services of daily life. However, each of these grants is carefully framed to ensure the ultimate supremacy and ideological consistency of the central state. Article 26 transforms the abstract ideal of communal autonomy into a practical framework for governance. It shows a sophisticated understanding that for autonomy to be meaningful, it must include control over key functions like justice, police, and taxation. However, it also demonstrates that this autonomy is not synonymous with independence. Every power granted is counterbalanced by a mechanism of central control, particularly in the crucial areas of ideology, education, and economics debt. The commune is the organ that executes policy, while the central state remains the brain that directs it. This structure allowed the Charter to promise a vibrant, self-governing community life while ensuring that all these communities moved in lockstep towards the goals of the revolutionary state. It's a blueprint for a system that is decentralized in its operation, but profoundly centralized in its direction and purpose. A model that would be emulated by other 20th century regimes seeking to mobilize local initiatives without surrendering overall control. Now we will move on to the section titled Legislation.
27. Two elected bodies will exercise legislative power: the Council of Senators, the Council of Provisori.
Article 27 establishes the bicameral structure of the legislative branch of the Carnaro state. It creates two separate elected bodies, the Council of Senators and the Council of Provisori, to share legislative power. This structure is not designed for checks and balances in the liberal democratic sense, but rather to represent two different aspects of the corporate state, one based on territory and wisdom, the Senate, and the other based on function and labor, the Provisori.
28. The Senate is elected by means of direct and secret universal suffrage by all citizens throughout the province who have attained the age of 21 years and have been invested with political rights. Any citizen who has a vote is eligible as a member of the Senate.
Article 28 establishes the method of election for the Council of Senators, and it does so in a way that seems to contradict the Charter's core principles. It mandates direct, secret, and universal suffrage based on individual citizenship, a classic liberal democratic model. This creates a fundamental paradox. A state built on functional corporate representation chooses its upper house through a system of geographic, individual representation. But this is necessary. The lower house, organized by function, can decide on economic affairs, while the upper house, organized by proportional representation, should decide on other policy matters.
29. Senators remain in office 10 years. They are elected in the proportion of 1 to every 1,000 electors, but in no case can their number be under 30. All electors form a single constituency. The election is to be by universal suffrage and proportional representation.
Article 29 defines the electoral system for the Senate, combining elements designed to create a stable, elite, and nationally focused legislative chamber. It provisions for a long term, a high representative ratio, a single national constituency, and proportional representation work together to produce a body intended to be deliberative, disengaged from petty local politics, and representative of the general will of the entire Carnaro nation. Article 29 reveals a deep political sophistication. It uses advanced electoral engineering to shape the character of the government. The Senate it describes as an attempt to institutionalize wisdom in national perspective. It is a body designed to be stable, 10-year terms, elite, high ratio, national, single constituency, and inclusive, proportional representation. This creates a powerful counterweight to the functional, interest-driven Council of Provisori, ensuring that the corporate state does not devolve into a mere bargaining house for sectoral demands, but is guided by a chamber with a mandate to consider the destiny of the nation as a single organic whole. This complex system shows the Charter's authors were not just dreamers, but serious political theorists attempting to solve the perceived flaws of liberal democracy.
30. The Senate has authority to make ordinances and laws with reference to the penal and civil code, the police, national defense, public secondary instruction, art, relations between the communes and the state. The Senate meets as a rule only once a year, in the month of October, for a short definite sitting.
Article 30 assigns the Senate a specific portfolio of high state legislative responsibilities, matters of law, order, security, culture, and federal relations. Furthermore, its design as a body that meets only briefly once a year indicates that it is intended to be a supervisory and legislative guide rather than a daily administrative body. This creates a system where the central government is designed for stability and long-term planning, not constant political debate. By meeting only once a year, the Senate is consciously designed to be above the fray of daily politics. It is the embodiment of the state's long-term memory and strategic direction. A council of elders that ensures the revolutionary project stays on course towards its goal of material and spiritual advancement. This model reflects a desire for a government that is both decisively active and thoughtfully stable, a direct rejection of the perceived chaos of parliamentary democracy.
31. The Council of the Provisory is composed of 60 delegates, elected by universal secret suffrage and proportional representation. 10 provisory are elected by industrial workers and agricultural laborers, 10 by seamen of all kinds, 10 by employers, 5 by rural industrial technicians, 5 by the managerial staff in private firms, 5 by the teachers in the public schools, by the students in the higher schools, and by other members of the sixth corporation, 5 by the liberal professions, 5 by public servants, 5 by cooperative societies of production, of labor, and of consumption.
Article 31 establishes the composition of the Council of Provisory, defining it as a body of 60 delegates elected by universal suffrage through a system of proportional representation within strictly separated professional corporations. This creates a legislature that is a microcosm of the nation's economic life, designed to replace geographic representation with functional representation and to translate the syndicalist organization of society directly into political power. Article 31 is the practical engine of the corporatist state, envisioned by the Charter of Carnaro. It is a radical attempt to dismantle the political landscape of the 19th century and build a new one, where the economy is the polity. It doesn't just allow for functional representation, it enforces it. By fracturing the economic landscape into distinct electoral groups, it seeks to channel all political energy into the management of a national productive effort. The Council of Provisory is designed not to be a chamber of debate on first principles, but a board of directors for the nation, where the different departments of the national economy negotiate their share of resources and responsibility.
32. The Provisory remain in office 2 years. They are not eligible unless they belong to the corporation represented.
Article 32 establishes two fundamental principles for the Council of Provisory: a short 2-year term of office and a strict functional qualification requirement. These rules are designed to ensure that the chamber remains closely connected to the productive economy it represents, preventing the emergence of a detached political class and reinforcing the syndicalist ideology of the state.
33. The Council of the Provisory meets usually twice in the year, in the months of May and November, and uses the laconic method of debate. It has authority to make ordinances and laws with reference to the commercial and maritime code, to the control of labor, to transport, to public works, to treaties of commerce, customs, tariffs, and similar matters, to technical and professional instruction, to industry and banking, to arts and crafts.
Article 33 assigns the Council of the Provisory a specific portfolio of economic, commercial, and social legislation and establishes its operational character as a brief, efficient, and business-like body. This design ensures that the nation's productive economy is managed by a legislature that mirrors its values, efficiency, technical expertise, and a focus on tangible results rather than endless political debate. Article 33 is the capstone of the Charter's economic vision. It creates a legislative body that is intended to be the antithesis of a traditional parliament. It is not a place for ideology or partisan strife, but a technical directive council composed of practitioners who meet briefly to manage the nation's economic machinery with Spartan efficiency. Its laconic nature and focused portfolio reflect a desire to replace politics with administration and debate with decisive action. This model aims to create a government that is both representative of the productive forces of society and capable of acting with the speed and decisiveness demanded by the revolutionary project. It is the ultimate expression of the belief that the state should be run like a well-managed corporation, with its board of directors, the Provisory, representing the various departments of the national enterprise.
34. The Senate and the Council of Provisory unite together once a year as a single body on the 1st of December as a Grand National Council under the title of Arreglo del Carnaro. The Arreglo discusses and deliberates on relations with other states, on finance and the Treasury, on the higher studies, on reforms of the Constitution, on extensions of liberty.
Article 34 establishes the Arango del Carnaro, an annual joint session of the two legislative councils that functions as a supreme sovereign body. This institution is designed to handle the most critical matters of state, foreign policy, finance, high culture, and constitutional change, by combining the wisdom of the Senate with the productive energy of the Provisori. It represents the highest expression of the state's unity and sovereign will. Article 34 does not merely create a committee. It establishes the sacred festival of the Carnaro state. The Arango del Carnaro is designed to be the moment where the nation, in its totality, consciously steers its own destiny. It is the institution that ensures the corporatist state does not fracture into competing economic interests and that the traditional state does not become detached from the productive life of the people. By merging the two chambers, it aims to create a sovereign will that is both wise and vigorous, traditional and revolutionary, grounded and aspirational. Now we will move on to the section titled The Executive.
35. Executive power in the province is exercised by 7 ministers elected jointly by the National Assembly, the Senate, and the Council of Provisori. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Minister for Finance and the Treasury, the Minister of Public Instruction are elected by the National Assembly. The Minister of the Interior and of Justice, the Minister of National Defense are elected by the Senate. The Council of Provisori elects the Minister of Public Economy and the Minister of Labor. The Minister for Foreign Affairs takes the title Prime Minister and represents the province in intercourse with other states, primus inter pares.
Article 35 establishes a plural executive, a 7-minister council, elected through an intricate process designed to balance the influence of the state's different representative bodies. Rather than a single leader or a premier appointed by Parliament, the executive is a composite body where each minister derives their mandate from a different part of the legislature, reflecting their specific portfolio. The Prime Minister is a primus inter pares, first among equals, with a specific international role. Article 35 of the Charter of Carnaro presents one of the most unique models of executive power ever conceived. It is a system of diffused and balanced executives designed to reflect the corporatist organization of the state itself. It represents the ultimate attempt to apply a mechanical, almost constitutional engineering solution to the problem of power, seeking to create a government that is stable, representative, and immune to tyranny, through its very complexity. However, its baroque complexity also reveals its weakness. It is a system for a utopian, perfectly balanced society, not for the turbulent, urgent, and personality-driven reality of a revolutionary city-state under siege. It stands as a fascinating what-if in political thought, a radically corporatist alternative to both presidential and parliamentary models.
36. The 7 ministers, once elected, remain in office for their allotted time. They decide everything that does not interfere with current administration. The Prime Minister presides over the discussions and has the deciding vote when the votes are equally balanced. The ministers are elected for a year and are not re-eligible except once. But after the interval of 1 year, they may be nominated again.
Article 36 defines the internal workings, tenure, and term limits for the 7-minister Executive Council. It establishes a system designed to ensure stability of governance, collective decision-making, and the prevention of an entrenched ministerial class. The rules create a rotating executive of experienced but temporary leaders, embodying the Charter's ideal of a citizen government rather than a professional political elite. Article 36 is not a mere set of procedural rules. It is the embodiment of the Charter's political philosophy applied to the executive branch. It aims to create a government that is collective rather than hierarchical, temporary rather than permanent, expert rather than partisan, accountable to the assemblies that elect it, yet independent in its daily operations. This vision of a rotating directorate of citizen experts represents a profound critique of and alternative to the professionalized politics of liberal democracy and the dictatorial model of communism. It is a utopian yet meticulously detailed attempt to solve the problem of power by ensuring that those who wield it do so briefly and as a duty, not as a career. Despite its practical failure and fume, it remains a fascinating artifact of radical political thought.
37. The judiciary power will be held by magistrates, labor judges, judges of the High Court, judges of the Criminal Court, the Court of Administration.
Article 37 establishes the judiciary as a separate and independent branch of government, held by professional magistrates. It outlines a structure of specialized courts, each with a distinct jurisdiction, indicating a sophisticated and modern approach to law that prioritizes expertise and recognizes the unique legal needs of the new corporatist state. The creation of specialized labor courts is a direct importation of syndicalist and socialist policy demands. These courts would be designed to quickly and expertly adjudicate disputes between workers and employers, between corporations, or over contracts and working conditions. Ultimately, this article completes the picture of a total state, one that seeks to organize every aspect of life, including conflict and justice, through rational, specialized institutions. It aims to replace the chaos of liberal democracy and the arbitrariness of dictatorship with a legal order that is both revolutionary and orderly, empowering the state while also seeking to hold it accountable to its own laws.
38. The magistrates elected to inspire public confidence by all the electors of the various communes in proportion to their number, decide all civil and commercial castes under the value of 5,000 lire, and questions of crime where the penalty of imprisonment does not last more than 1 year.
Article 38 establishes the popular election of local magistrates by the communes and defines their jurisdiction over minor civil and criminal cases. This creates a decentralized judiciary that is deeply embedded in and accountable to the local community, reflecting the Charter's core principles of popular sovereignty, communal autonomy, and the democratization of state functions.
39. The labor judges decide cases of controversy between employers and workers, whether wage earners or salaried staff. The labor judges are grouped in colleges, the member of each college being nominated by one of those corporations which elect the council of the provisori. According to the following scale: 2 by industrial workers and agricultural laborers, 2 by all workers connected with the sea, 2 by employers, 1 by technical workers, industrial or agricultural, 1 by the liberal professions, 1 by members of the administrative staff in private firms, 1 by public employees, 1 by teachers, by students of the higher institutes, and by other members of the sixth corporation, 1 by the cooperative societies of production, of labor, and of consumption. The labor judges have power to divide their colleges into branches in order to render their proceedings more rapid. They are to dispense justice with promptitude, clearness, and expedition. A joint assembly of the branches constitutes a court of appeal.
Article 39 establishes a system of specialized labor courts, Judici del Lavoro, to adjudicate all disputes between employers and employees. Their composition is meticulously based on a corporatist model, with judges nominated by the various economic corporations. This system is designed to replace class conflict with structured, expert arbitration, making the state the ultimate guarantor of social peace and economic justice. This implies that the world of work is to be governed by its own participants. The law is to be administered by peers who understand the specific realities, customs, and technicalities of each industry. By creating courts where judges represent economic functions rather than embody legal neutrality, the Charter proposes a radical redefinition of justice itself. Justice is no longer a blind, impartial arbiter of individual rights, but an instrument of social policy aimed at maintaining harmony and maximizing productivity for the strength of the state. It is the ultimate expression of the corporatist ideal, where every aspect of life, including conflict, is organized and managed for the greater good of the national community.
40. The judges of the High Court adjudicate on all questions, civil, commercial, and penal, which are not dealt with by the magistrates and the labor judges, except those which are dealt with by the judges of the criminal court. The judges of the High Court constitute the Court of Appeal for sentences of magistrates. The judges of the High Court are chosen by the Court of Administration from citizens holding the title of Doctor of Law, LLD.
Article 40 establishes the High Court as the Supreme Court of General Jurisdiction and the apex of the appellate system. It serves as a catch-all for major cases, a reviewing body for lower courts, and is notably composed of a professional legal elite, marking a significant departure from the democratic and corporatist principles applied elsewhere in the Charter. The Charter creates a 3-tiered judicial system. Tier 1, local and democratic, elected magistrates handle minor, everyday cases. Tier 2, functional and corporatist. Corporation nominated judges handle specialized labor disputes. Tier 3, national and elitist, appointed legal experts handle major cases and appeals, ensuring national unity and legal coherence. Article 40 completes the Charter's complex judicial picture. It shows that the revolutionary project was not an outright rejection of all traditional institutions, but a strategic hybridization. The Charter embraces popular democracy at the local level, functional representation in the economic sphere, and meritocratic elitism at the apex of state power. The High Court is the anchor of this system, the institution designed to ensure that the revolution is codified into a lasting, rational, and respectable legal order. It is the ultimate guarantee that the carnival of fiume would eventually be succeeded by a stable, law-based state, capable of commanding respect both domestically and internationally.
41. 7 sworn citizens, assisted by 2 deputies and presided over by a judge of the High Court, compose the Criminal Court, which tries all crimes of a political nature and all those misdemeanors which would be punished by imprisonment for more than 3 years.
Article 41 establishes a criminal court with a hybrid composition, part jury, part professional judiciary, to adjudicate high crimes and political offenses. This institution is designed to balance popular sovereignty with legal expertise, ensuring that trials for the most serious crimes have both democratic legitimacy and judicial rigor. It reflects a deep concern for protecting the state from internal threats while providing safeguards against judicial tyranny.
42. Elected by the National Council, the Court of Administration is composed of 5 acting members and 2 supplementary. Of the acting members, at least 3, and of the supplementary members, at least 1, shall be chosen from doctors of law. The Court of Administration deals with acts and decrees issued by the legislative and executive authorities to ascertain that they are in conformity with the Constitution. Any statutory conflict between the legislative and executive authorities, between the province and the communes, between one commune and another, between the province and the corporations, between the province and private persons, between the communes and the corporations, between the communes and private individuals, cases of high treason against the province on the part of citizens who hold legislative or executive power, attacks on the rights of the people, civil contests between the province and the communes or between the commune and commune, questions regarding this rights of citizenship and naturalization, questions referring to the competence, function of the various magistrates and judges. The Court of Administration has the ultimate revision of sentences and nominates by vote the judges of the High Court. Citizens who are members of the Court of Administration are forbidden to hold any other office, either in that commune or in any other. Nor may they carry on any trade or profession during the whole period that they are in office.
Article 42 creates a Court of Administration with sweeping powers of constitutional review, conflict resolution, and judicial appointment. Its mandate is to serve as the ultimate arbiter of disputes between all organs of the state, between the state and its citizens, and to ensure all laws and decrees conform to the Constitution. To perform this role, it is designed to be an elite, independent, and wholly dedicated body, insulated from all other political or economic influences. Article 42 does not merely create another court, it establishes a supreme guardian institution. The Court of Administration is the brain and conscience of the Carnaro state, designed to be independent, expert, and powerful enough to keep all other branches in check. It represents the highest aspiration of the Charter, to create a revolutionary order that is also a lawful order, where power is channeled, regulated, and legitimized by a rational constitutional framework. This institution alone elevates the Charter from a mere political manifesto to a sophisticated, modern constitutional document. It reveals the author's profound understanding that a state based on new principles requires a powerful and independent judiciary to protect those principles from being eroded by those who wield power in its name. Now we will move on to the section titled The Commandant.
43. When the province is in extreme peril and sees that her safety depends on the will and devotion of one man who is capable of rousing and of leading all the forces of the people in a united and victorious effort, the National Council in solemn conclave in the Arengo may, voting by word of mouth, nominate a commandant and transmit to him supreme authority without appeal. The Council decides the period long or short, during which he is to rule, not forgetting that in the Roman Republic the dictatorship lasted 6 months.
Article 43 establishes a constitutional procedure for instituting a temporary, supreme dictatorship in times of extreme crisis. It is a carefully defined emergency power that allows the sovereign assembly, the Orango, to transfer all political authority to a single leader, a commandant, who is tasked with saving the state. This clause is framed with historical precedent and implicit warnings about the dangers of such power. Article 43 is the escape hatch built into the Constitution. It acknowledges that laws and institutions are fragile and that in the final analysis, the state believes its survival depends on the virtue and power of a single leader. While framed with Republican safeguards, approval by the Orango, a preset time limit, and a historical warning, the clause seemingly undermines the rest of the Charter. Ultimately, though, power still remains vested in the popular institutions. This clause establishes a legal pathway to dictatorship, revealing that the revolutionary, syndicalist state's highest value is not liberty, equality, or even law, but victorious survival, which it entrusts to the will of a heroic commander.
44. During the period of his rule, the commandant holds all powers, political and military, legislative and executive. The holders of executive power assume the office of commissaries and secretaries under him.
Article 44 defines the nature of the dictatorship once the commandant is appointed. It establishes a total and an unqualified concentration of power in the hands of a single individual, effectively reducing the entire state apparatus to an extension of his will. This clause transforms the state from a complex constitutional republic into a pure hierarchical autocracy with a single stroke.
45. On the expiration of the period of rule, the National Council again assembles and decides to confirm the commandant in his office, or else to substitute another citizen in his place, or else to depose him, or even to banish him.
Article 45 establishes the process for ending the state of dictatorship. It returns ultimate sovereign authority to the National Council, Orango, giving it a set of options, from confirmation to banishment, to judge the outgoing commandant's performance. This clause represents an attempt to reconcile the logic of dictatorship with the principle of popular sovereignty, creating a theoretical mechanism for a return to constitutional normalcy. The clause is a direct invocation of the Roman model of dictatorship, where Cincinnatus famously laid down his absolute power after 6 months and returned to his farm. The Charter is attempting to legislate this virtuous Roman ideal.
46. Any citizen holding political rights, whether he have any office in the province or not, may be elected to the supreme office.
Article 46 establishes the criteria for eligibility to the office of commandant, mandating a principle of radical openness. It states that any citizen with political rights is eligible, explicitly disregarding any requirement for prior political experience or current office holding. This reinforces the dictatorship's basis in charismatic authority and direct popular acclamation, rather than in a bureaucratic or political career path. Article 46 is not a minor procedural detail. It is the final piece of the Charter's theory of emergency leadership. It completes the picture of a dictatorship that is constitutionally mandated, popularly legitimized, and charismatically driven. Now we will move on to the section titled National Defense.
47. In the province of Carnaro, all the citizens of both sexes, from 17 to 55 years of age, are liable for military service for the defense of the country. After selection has been made, men in sound health will serve in the forces of land and sea. Men who are not so strong and women will serve in ambulances, hospitals, in administration, in ammunition factories, and in any other auxiliary work according to the capacity and skill of each.
Article 47 establishes universal and total military conscription for all citizens within a broad age range, with service obligations tailored to an individual's physical capacity. It creates a doctrine of total mobilization where every citizen, regardless of gender or health, has a mandated role in defending the state, blurring the lines between military and civilian spheres. Article 47 is more than a military policy. It is a statement of fundamental principle about the nature of the Carnaro state and the obligations of citizenship. It creates a totalizing civic religion of service and sacrifice. The citizen is not just a voter or a worker, they are a soldier, either in a uniform or in a factory smock. The clause embodies the Charter's drive to organize, categorize, and mobilize every facet of human life for the strength and glory of the community.
48. State assistance on an ample scale is granted to all citizens who, during military service, have contracted any incurable infirmity, and to their families if in need. The state adopts the children of all citizens who are killed in defense of their country, assists their families in distress, and commends to the memory of future generations the names of the fallen.
Article 48 establishes a comprehensive covenant of care between the state and its military citizens. It guarantees ample assistance to disabled veterans and the families of the fallen, and it commits the state to the symbolic act of adopting war orphans and immortalizing the names of heroes. This creates a reciprocal relationship. Total sacrifice demands total care, transforming the state into a metaphorical family for those who give everything to it. Article 48 is far more than a veterans' benefits policy. It is a key component in the construction of a total state based on a sacred bond of sacrifice and reciprocity. It completes the logic of Article 47's universal conscription. If the state has the right to demand everything from its citizens, including their lives and health, then it must consequently have the duty to care for those who give them. This transforms the relationship from one of mere power into one of mutual obligation, fostering a deep, familial loyalty that is both emotional and ideological. By promising to adopt orphans and immortalize names, the state insinuates itself into the most intimate spheres of life and death, becoming the arbiter of memory and the guarantor of legacy. This is the ultimate expression of the state's totalizing ambition, to be the provider in life, the comforter in death, and the eternal witness to sacrifice.
49. In the time of peace and security, the state will not maintain a standing army, but all the nation will remain armed, as prescribed by law, and its forces by land and sea, well and duly trained. Strict military service is confined to the period of instruction, or to periods when war is either actually being waged, or when there is immediate danger of war. During periods of instruction or of war, the citizen will lose none of his civil and political rights, and will be able to exercise them whenever the necessities of active service permit.
Article 49 establishes the principle of a militia-based national defense. It abolishes a professional standing army in peacetime, instead mandating that the entire nation remain armed and trained. It carefully balances this permanent state of civilian readiness with protections for the civil rights of citizens even during military service, ensuring the citizen soldier does not become a mindless automaton. Article 49 presents a sophisticated model of democratic militarism. It seeks to harness the defensive power of a universally armed and trained population while erecting robust legal barriers against the threat of military dictatorship. It envisions a society of citizen soldiers who are defenders of their liberty, not tools of a general's ambition. The soldier is subordinate to the citizen, and the military is subordinate to the law. This reflects the Charter's ultimate priority, the creation of a community that is both fiercely militant and fiercely free, where the power of the sword is always checked by the power of the ballot, and is never separated from the people it is meant to serve. In this model, the rifle and the voting booth are not in opposition. They are the twin pillars of a free, armed, and sovereign republic. This concept stands as one of the most unique and principled aspects of the Charter's political vision. Now we will move on to the section titled Public Instruction.
50. For any race of noble origin, culture is the best of all weapons. For the Adriatic race, harassed for centuries by a ceaseless struggle with an unlettered usurper, culture is more than a weapon. Like faith and justice, it is an unconquerable force. For the people of Fiume, the moment of her rebirth to liberty, it becomes the instrument more helpful than any other against the insidious plots that have encircled her for centuries. Culture is the preservative against corruption, the buttress against ruin. In Dante's Carnaro, the culture of the language of Dante is a custodian of that which has ever been reckoned as the most precious treasure of the people, the highest testimony to the nobility of their origin, the chief sign of their moral right of rule. That moral right is what the new state must fight for. On its will to victory is founded the exaltation of the human ideal. The new state, with unity completed, liberty achieved, justice enthroned, must make it her first duty to defend, preserve, and fight for unity, liberty, justice, in the spirit of man. The culture of Rome must be here in our midst and in the culture of Italy. For this cause, the Italian province of Carnaro makes education the culture of her people, the crown and summit of her constitution, esteems the treasure of Latin culture as the foundation of her welfare.
Article 50 posits culture, specifically Italian Latin culture, as the supreme weapon and ultimate purpose of the Fiumian state. It frames the city's struggle not just as a political or territorial conflict, but as a cultural and spiritual war against barbarism and corruption. The state's primary duty is thus redefined as the defender and promoter of this culture, making education and the preservation of a civilizational heritage the crown and summit of its constitution. Article 50 transforms the Charter of Carnaro from a political document into a cultural manifesto. It argues that the state's highest purpose is not to manage the economy or administer justice, but to wage a perpetual cultural war for the preservation and expansion of a specific civilizational ideal. In doing so, it reveals the core of the Fiume experiment. It was an attempt to create a political community where life was subordinated to art, power was justified by culture, and the state existed as a means to achieve spiritual and aesthetic greatness.
51. The city of Fiume will have a free university, housed in a spacious building, capable of accommodating a great number of students and ruled by its own special ordinances. There will be in the city of Fiume a school of painting, a school of decorative art, a school of music, free from any legal interference, conducted in a candid and open spirit under the guidance of a judgment acute enough to get rid of the encumbrance of the inefficient, to choose the best students from among the good, and to assist the best in the discovery of new possibilities in the rendering of human sentiment.
Article 51 mandates the establishment of a free university and specialized art schools in Fiume. It goes beyond mere provision of education to articulate a specific, avant-garde philosophy for these institutions. They are to be autonomous, generously funded, and ruthlessly meritocratic, with the explicit goal of fostering innovation and genius in the arts and sciences. This represents the institutionalization of the state's mission to become a beacon of cultural production. Article 51 reveals the Charter of Carnaro to be a deeply ambitious project of social engineering through culture. It is not enough for the state to have a military or an economy. It must have a world-class university and cutting-edge art schools. These institutions are conceived not as passive repositories of knowledge, but as active, ruthless, and generously funded laboratories for the creation of a new culture and a new type of human being. This vision of state-sponsored, avant-garde, and elitist cultural production is a definitive feature of the romantic sensibility that D'Annunzio pioneered. It seeks to merge the revolutionary spirit of the avant-garde with the power of the state, creating a potent and ultimately volatile mixture, where art becomes a tool of politics and politics itself becomes a work of art.
52. The secondary schools will be under the supervision of the Senate, the technical and professional schools under that of the Council of the Provisori, higher education under that of the National Council. In every school and in every commune, the Italian language will have the first place. In secondary schools, the teaching of the various dialects spoken in the Italian province of Carnaro will be obligatory. Primary instruction will be given in the language spoken by the majority of the inhabitants of each commune, and also in parallel classes in that spoken by the minority. If any commune tries to evade the obligation of providing those double courses of instruction, the central government of the province reserves its right to provide them at the cost of the commune.
Article 52 accomplishes three main goals. It assigns oversight of different educational levels to the corresponding legislative chamber, reinforcing the corporatist state structure. It unequivocally establishes Italian as the primary language of the state and its future elite, and It mandates a bilingual education system that protects minority languages at the local level while ensuring they remain subordinate to Italian. This creates a system of integrative multilingualism with a clear assimilationist goal. Article 52 exposes the core tension within the Carnaro project between its revolutionary rhetoric of liberty and its pragmatic, authoritarian nation building. It offers a veneer of pluralism in minority rights, but ultimately subordinates them to the non-negotiable goal of creating a unified, Italian-speaking national community. The educational system is meticulously designed as a machine for this purpose, nurturing local identities at a folk level while systematically funneling the population toward a single, state-sanctioned linguistic and cultural identity. This model of state-controlled, integrative multilingualism is not about celebrating diversity, but about managing and ultimately overcoming it. It reveals the Charter not just as a political document, but as a detailed plan for cultural hegemony.
53. An educational council decides upon the nature and method of primary instruction, which is compulsory in the schools of all communes. The teaching of choral singing based on the genuine poetry of the people, folk songs, and the teaching of decorative art based on examples of indigenous popular art will hold a first place. The council will consist of a representative of each commune, 2 representatives of secondary schools, 2 of technical and professional schools, 2 of institutions of higher education to be elected by professors and students, 2 by the schools of music, 2 by the School of Decorative Art.
Article 53 establishes a corporatist educational council to design and mandate a unified primary curriculum for all communes. Its most distinctive feature is the requirement that choral singing and decorative art, rooted in indigenous folk traditions, form the cornerstone of this curriculum. This approach aims to use education not merely for literacy, but as a tool to forge a unified national identity through a shared aesthetic and cultural experience. This is not just about music education. Choral singing is a powerful tool for building collective identity. It requires individuals to sublimate their individual voices into a harmonious whole, creating a visceral experience of unity and discipline. It is a metaphor for the syndicalist state itself. Article 53 reveals the Charter of Carnaro's sophisticated and ambitious understanding of power. True power is not just control over laws and armies, but control over culture and consciousness itself. By mandating a primary education centered on collective folk aesthetics, the state seeks to build its foundation not on force, but on a deeply ingrained sense of its shared identity and beauty. It is an attempt to win the hearts and minds of the next generation by making the nation's culture a delightful and participatory experience. In this vision, the schoolhouse becomes the most important fortress of the state, and the teacher, alongside the soldier and the artist, becomes a central agent in the creation of the new national community. This fusion of education, art, and politics is a definitive feature of a totalitarian political project that the Charter aims to pioneer.
54. Schools, well lighted and ventilated, must not have on their walls any emblems of religion or of political parties. The public schools welcome the followers of every religious profession, the believers in every creed, and those, too, who are able to live without an altar and without a God. Liberty of conscience receives entire respect. Each one may offer up his silent prayers. But there will be inscribed on the walls inspiring words that, like an heroic symphony, will never lose their power to raise and animate the soul. And there will be representations of those masterpieces of the painter's art which interpret most nobly the endless longings and aspirations of mankind.
Article 54 mandates the creation of a secular sacred space within public schools. It aggressively bans all traditional religious and political symbols to instead promote a state-sponsored civic religion based on heroic nationalism, aesthetic beauty, and individual conscience. The school is to be a temple not of God or party, but of the human spirit and the nation, guided by the principles of the Carnaro Revolution. The article understands that education happens through the entire environment, not just the curriculum. The very walls are to be pedagogical tools, constantly reinforcing the state's values. This is a holistic and indeed totalizing approach to formation. Article 54 is arguably one of the most ideologically potent articles in the Charter. It moves beyond governing structures to dictate the very symbolic and spiritual atmosphere of public life. It reveals a project that is not merely political but anthropological. It seeks to create a new type of human being, one whose highest loyalties are to the nation and the human spirit as defined by the state, and whose sensibilities are shaped by a curated world of heroic words and noble art. The public school is the primary laboratory for this ambitious experiment. In its attempt to forge a secular sacred space, the Charter of Carnaro provides a complete blueprint for the kind of state-driven, spiritual engineering that would characterize the totalitarian nature of its project. Now we will move on to the section titled Reforms of the Constitutions.
55. Every 7 years, the Great National Council will meet in a special conference to consider constitutional reforms. But the Constitution can be altered at any time, when a third of the citizens, electors, make a request for the alteration. The following bodies have the right to propose amendments of the Constitution: the members of the National Council, the representatives of the communes, the Court of Administration, the corporations.
Article 55 establishes a dual-track process for constitutional amendment. It provides for a regular, septennial review by the supreme legislative body, the scheduled track, and an extraordinary, citizen-initiated process that can be triggered at any time, the popular track. It also designates which institutions have the right to formally propose changes, ensuring that amendments arise from legitimate bodies within the corporatist state structure. Article 55 reveals the Charter of Carnaro to be a self-conscious and sophisticated constitutional experiment. It is not a rigid dogma imposed upon the future, but a flexible framework designed for evolution. By creating multiple pathways for reform, through scheduled review, popular demand, and institutional proposal, it demonstrates a deep understanding of statecraft. It seeks to legitimize the state by providing peaceful and legal channels for fundamental change, thereby strengthening the Constitution against the twin threats of revolutionary violence and stagnant obsolescence. The article completes the picture of the Carnaro state as one that is revolutionary in its foundation, but rational and procedural in its operation. It is the final, crucial piece that ensures the Constitution, and by extension the state it creates, can endure and adapt, embodying the revolutionary spirit not as a single event, but as an ongoing process. Now we will move on to the section titled The Right of Initiative.
56. All citizens belonging to electoral bodies have the right of initiating legislative proposals with regard to questions which fall within the sphere of action of one or other council. But the initiative will not take effect unless at least 1/4 of the electors of the council in question are unanimous moving in supporting it.
Article 56 establishes a citizen initiative process for proposing legislation. It grants groups of citizens the right to formally propose laws to the legislative councils, but it sets a high barrier: unanimity with among a significant minority, 25% of the relevant electoral body. To prevent frivolous or factional proposals from clogging the legislative agenda, this creates a hybrid system that blends direct popular engagement with a filtering mechanism to ensure only broadly supported ideas advance. Article 56 is a sophisticated, albeit restrictive, tool for democratic engagement. It reflects a deep desire to avoid a purely top-down, elitist lawmaking process and to incorporate the energy and ideas of the citizenry. However, by setting the bar at the unanimity of a large minority, it ensures that this popular power is exercised only in rare cases of overwhelming consensus within a sector of society. It is designed to produce only serious, well-vetted proposals that complement the work of the corporatist councils rather than disrupt it. In essence, this clause aims to have it both ways: to foster a vibrant, participatory political culture while maintaining the stability and order of the corporatist state structure. It is a mechanism for controlled and managed popular sovereignty, perfectly reflecting the Charter's overarching goal of achieving revolutionary ends through a highly organized and structured process. Now we will move on to the section titled The Power of Appeal.
57. All laws that have received the sanction of the two legislative bodies may be subjected to public reconsideration with the possibility of repeal, provided that such reconsideration be asked for by a number of electors equal to at least a fourth of the enfranchised citizens.
Article 57 grants the electorate a power of legislative veto. It allows a significant minority of citizens, 25%, to demand a public reconsideration of any law passed by the Senate and the Council of Provisori, with the possibility of that law being repealed. This creates a direct democratic safeguard against legislative overreach or laws that are significantly out of step with popular will. Article 57 is a testament to the radical democratic spirit that infused the Charter of Carnaro. It places a formidable check on government power by vesting the final say on legislation in the hands of the citizenry. This mechanism ensures that the Carnaro state, for all its innovative corporatist structure, remains grounded in the principle of popular sovereignty. It acknowledges that even the most well-designed representative systems can make mistakes or become unrepresentative, and it provides a peaceful, constitutional means for the people to correct those mistakes. By setting the threshold at 25%, it seeks to balance the need for popular control with the need for legislative stability, ensuring that only laws with truly significant opposition face repeal. This makes the Charter not just a blueprint for a corporatist state, but for a popular republic with direct democratic safeguards. Now we will move on to the section titled The Right of Petition.
58. All citizens have the right of petition towards those bodies which they have helped to elect.
Article 58 guarantees all citizens the right of petition. However, it is not a universal right to petition any authority. It is specifically limited to petitioning those bodies which they have helped to elect. This creates a direct, accountable, and functional line of communication between an individual and their specific representatives within the state's complex structure. Now we will move on to the section titled Reduplication of Offices.
59. No citizen may fill more than one official post, nor take part in two legislative bodies at the same time.
Article 59 establishes a strict principle of the separation of offices and the non-accumulation of power. It prohibits any single citizen from holding more than one official government post or serving in two legislative bodies simultaneously. This is a constitutional mechanism designed to prevent the emergence of an oligarchic elite, combat corruption, and ensure a broad distribution of power and experience within the citizenry. Now we will move on to the section titled Recall.
60. Any official appointment may be revoked when the official in question loses his political rights through a sentence confirmed by the court of law, when the decree of revocation is voted for by more than half of the members of the electoral body.
Article 60 establishes a dual mechanism for the revocation of official appointments. It provides for both a judicial political removal, triggered by a criminal conviction, and a direct democratic recall, through a vote by the official's own electoral body. This ensures that officials are accountable to both the rule of law and the will of their constituents. This also closely mirrors the innovation of the Paris Commune, which established the recallability of the workers' deputies at any time. In many ways, the Regency of Carnaro is somewhat akin to a Syndicalist Paris Commune. It never created a lasting form of state, but it did provide humanity with a model of socialist governance. Now we will move on to the section titled Responsibility.
61. All holders of power and all public officials of the province are legally responsible for any injury caused to state, commune, corporation, or single citizen by any transgression of theirs, whether through misdoing, carelessness, cowardice, or inaccuracy.
Article 61 establishes the principle of absolute legal responsibility for all public officials. It removes any notion of sovereign immunity, making officials personally liable for any harm caused by their misconduct or negligence, whether to the state, its subdivisions, or individual citizens. This creates a powerful deterrent against abuse of power and institutionalizes a culture of accountability. This clause fundamentally rejects the idea that the state or its agents are above the law. It establishes that public office is a duty, not a privilege, and with it comes immense responsibility. Legally responsible implies that officials can be sued in court for damages, civil liability, and potentially prosecuted for criminal offenses arising from their official actions. This makes them financially and personally accountable. The responsibility is placed on the official, not the state treasury. This is intended to create a direct personal incentive for diligence and integrity. Article 61 is one of the most ambitious and severe clauses in the Charter of Carnaro. It seeks to enforce a level of accountability that is rare even in modern democracies. It is a legal embodiment of the revolutionary desire to create a completely new kind of state, one devoid of corruption, cowardice, and incompetence. By making every official personally liable for their actions to the point of being sued for carelessness or inaccuracy, the Charter aims to ensure that the immense power granted to the state by the preceding articles is exercised with the utmost diligence, bravery, and integrity. This clause reveals the Charter's radical republican and demanding nature. It expects public servants to be not just administrators, but heroes and paragons of virtue, and it backs this expectation with the full force of the law. It is the ultimate guarantee that the new life promised by the revolution will not be betrayed by those entrusted to lead it. Now we will move on to the section titled Remuneration.
62. All public officials enumerated in the statutes and appointed in the new Constitution will receive suitable remuneration, in accordance with the decision of the National Council annually revised.
Article 62 mandates that all public officials shall receive a salary, the amount of which is to be determined and annually reviewed by the National Council, the Arengo. This establishes the principle of paid public service, moving away from the amateur or aristocratic model and aiming to create a professional, accountable, and independent bureaucracy. It seeks to break the link between wealth and power, reduce the incentive for corruption, and ensure that those who govern are responsible to the representative assembly that pays them. By making the Arengo the annual arbiter of official salaries, the Charter ensures that the question of remuneration remains a live political issue, subject to democratic debate, and aligned with the principle that all public servants are ultimately accountable to the sovereign people and their corporations. It is a practical measure to realize the ideal of a state governed by virtuous and dedicated citizens, not by a self-perpetuating oligarchy. Now we will move on to the section titled The Aedeles.
63. There will be in the province a college of Aedeles, wisely selected from men of taste, skill, and liberal education. This college will be a revival not so much of the Roman Aedeles as of the office for the adornment of the city, which in our 14th century arranged a new road or a new piazza with the same sense of rhythm and proportion which guided them in the conduct of a republican triumph or a carnival display. It will provide for the decorum of life, secure the safety, decency, sanitation of public edifices and private dwellings, prevent the disfigurement of roads by awkward or ill-placed buildings, enliven civic festivals by sea and land with graceful ornament, recalling our forefathers for whom the glory of the sunshine and a few fair garlands of flowers with hue and beauty of pageant and motion suffice to frame a miracle of joy, convince the workers that to add beauty, some sign of joy in the building, to the humblest habitation is an act of piety. The sense of religion, of human mystery, of the profundity of nature, may be passed on from generation to generation in the simplest symbol carved or painted on the kneading trough or the cradle, on the loom or the distaff, on the linen chest or the cottage beam. It will try to reawaken in our people the love of beautiful line and color in the things that are used in their daily life, showing them how much, in the old days, could be achieved by a slight geometrical design, by a star, a flower, a heart, a serpent or a dove on a pitcher or oiled jar or jug, on a bench or chest or platter. It will serve to show how our people, how the ancient spirit of communal liberty manifested itself even in the utensils that received the imprint of man's life. Finally, convinced that a people cannot attain to strength and nobility without noble architecture, It will endeavor to make modern architects realize that the new materials, iron, glass, and concrete, must be raised to the level of harmonious life by the invention of a new architecture.
Article 63 establishes a College of Aediles, a state body composed of artistic experts tasked with overseeing the aesthetic and spiritual environment of the entire province. Its mandate is vast, from urban planning and public health to festival organization and the promotion of beautiful craftsmanship in everyday objects. It represents the ultimate fusion of politics and art, aiming to infuse every aspect of life with beauty, meaning, and a sense of sacred joy, thereby forging a new, elevated communal identity. Article 63 is not a mere policy. It is a philosophical manifesto disguised as a government ordinance. It reveals that the ultimate goal of the Regency of Carnaro was not just political independence or economic reform, but the achievement of a cultural and spiritual revolution. The state, through the College of Aediles, takes upon itself the responsibility for the soul of its people, believing that by controlling the aesthetic environment, from the city plan down to the design of a water jug, it can produce a citizenry that is stronger, nobler, and more joyful. It is the most ambitious and totalizing article in the Charter, proposing that the true constitution of a people is written not just in laws, but in the very beauty and form of their daily existence. This fusion of art, life, and politics remains the most enduring and influential aspect of D'Annunzio's experiment. Now we will move on to the final section of the Constitution, titled Music.
64. In the Italian province of Carnaro, music is a social and religious institution. Once in 1,000 or 2,000 years, music springs from the soul of the people and flows on forever. A noble race is not one that creates a god in its own image, but one that creates also the song wherewith to do him homage. Every rebirth of a noble race is a lyric force, every sentiment that is common to the whole race, a potential lyric. Music, the language of ritual, has power, above all else, to exalt the achievement and the life of man. Does it not seem that great music has power to bring spiritual peace to the strained and anxious multitude? The reign of the human spirit is not yet. When matter acting on matter shall be able to replace man's physical strength, then will the spirit of man begin to see the dawn of liberty. So said a man of Dalmatia, of our own Adriatic, the blind seer of Sebenico. As cockcrow heralds the dawn, so music is the herald of the soul's awakening. Meanwhile, in the instruments of labor, of profit, and of sport, in the noisy machines which, even they, fall into a poetical rhythm, music can find her motives and her harmonies. In the pauses of music is heard the silence of the 10th corporation.
Article 64 declares music to be a social and religious institution, positioning it as the highest expression of a people's soul and the essential force for their spiritual awakening and national rebirth. It frames music not as entertainment, but as a sacred, communal ritual capable of unifying the race, exalting human achievement, and heralding a future age of liberty governed by the human spirit. The state's music must not be purely nostalgic. It must find beauty and rhythm in the modern world, in the very sounds of industry, labor, and sport. This aligns with the futurist fascination with the music of machines and the Charter's own productivist ethos. The state itself is conceived as a total work of art, and music is its soundtrack and sacred liturgy. Life in Carnaro was to be a continuous, aesthetically orchestrated experience. Article 64 is not a law, it is a symphonic manifesto. It completes the vision of the Carnaro state by giving it a soul. It argues that a constitution is not just a framework for government, but a score for a national symphony. The goal of the state is to become a collective artistic creator, whose masterpiece is not a painting or a statue, but the spirit of its people, expressed through the sacred, unifying, and exalting power of music. It is the most radical articulation of the project's aim, to make politics poetic and to make life itself a work of art.
65. In every commune of the province there will be a choral society and an orchestra subsidized by the state. In the city of Fiume, The College of Adeles will be commissioned to erect a great concert hall, accommodating an audience of at least 10,000, with tiers of seats and ample space for choir and orchestra. The great orchestral and choral celebrations will be entirely free, in the language of the Church, a gift of God.
Article 65 mandates the creation of a state-subsidized network of musical institutions across the province, culminating in the construction of a massive concert hall in Fiume. Its purpose is to make grand musical experiences accessible to the entire population, transforming them from commercial entertainment into free, sacred, communal rituals that bind the citizenry together. The hall is a physical manifestation of the state's cultural priorities. It is meant to rival and replace cathedrals as the central gathering place for communal expression, becoming a secular temple dedicated to the nation's art and spirit. Article 65 is a plan for the musical mobilization of the masses. It reveals that the Carnaro state intends to govern not only through laws and corporations, but through the deliberate manipulation of sentiment and spirit. By building the infrastructure for mass musical rituals and offering them as a free gift, the state positions itself as the provider of spiritual nourishment and the organizer of communal ecstasy. This transforms the role of government from a manager of resources into a director of souls, using the power of art to create the very national community it claims merely to represent. It is the culmination of the Charter's project to make politics aesthetic, and to make aesthetics the highest form of politics. Well, in regard to the Charter of Carnaro, that's all she wrote. Now we will go into a brief summary of the entire Charter, as well as concluding thoughts. To summarize, I came up with the idea of writing a script of a syndicalist worker justifying the Charter of Carnaro. Here's what I came up with.
Comrades, sisters, and brothers of the producing classes. You look at this Charter of Carnaro, and you see the flamboyant language of a poet. You see the hand of D'Annunzio, the aristocrat. I see that too. But look deeper. Look past the decoration and see the machinery. This document is not a fascist manifesto. It is the first and only constitutional blueprint for a syndicalist state ever put to paper. Let me break it down for you in our terms. First and most importantly, it places our class, the producers, at the very foundation of the state. It abolishes the parasitic capitalist parliament, that talking shop of lawyers and landlords. In its place, it establishes a council of provisori, a chamber elected not by geography, but by syndicates, by us, the industrial workers, the sailors, the technicians, the farmers. For the first time, the state's legislature is built directly on the organization of labor. Our unions don't just lobby the government, they become the government. Second, it declares the primacy of productive labor over idle capital. Article 9 is the heart of our struggle. It states that the only legitimate title to ownership is labor. It abolishes the absolute right to private property. If a capitalist is an indolent owner, a parasite who leaves his factory idle or his land fallow, he can be stripped of his political rights. The economy is to be organized for production, not for profit. Third, it guarantees the rights we fight for on the streets. It doesn't just promise equality, it enforces it. Equal pay for equal work, universal suffrage for men and women, a state-funded right to work, and a comprehensive system of social security for the sick, the elderly, and the unemployed. These aren't gifts from above. They are constitutional rights won and defended by our class power, embedded in the law. Yes, it has a strong executive. Yes, it talks of nation and culture. This is not a contradiction, but it is a strategy. We are under siege from international capital and predatory states. To defend our revolutionary commune, we need discipline and unity. The corporations are how we organize that unity. They end the fratricidal war between workers and instead unite all producers, the manual worker, the engineer, the manager, in a common front to manage our industries for the common good. The cultural talk is about forging the collective spirit necessary to defend our gains. The songs, the art, the education, they are tools to create the new syndicalist man and woman, proud producers who see themselves as the rightful masters of society. So, do not be fooled by the poet's rhetoric. This charter is our weapon. It is a legal framework that transfers power from the boardroom to the workshop, from the capitalist to the producer. It is a constitution that doesn't just allow the class struggle, It is designed to win it for us, forever. This isn't Denuncio's fantasy. It is our program, written into law. Let us learn from it, and let us build upon it.
Now, with that said, let's move on to some concluding thoughts. Earlier, I posted my thoughts for a Leninist vanguardist syndicalism/mutualism on X, which was greatly inspired by the Charter of Carnaro. Let me reproduce them here. Civilizational states that are federated into joint autonomous bodies, radical decentralization, and autonomy. People's Bank as a national bank. Industrial people's banks. Boards of all banks are determined by the occupations. Syndical governance. All congresses and councils to represent occupations, no professional politicians, no kings, no premiers, crown the constitution, not men, no decadent democracy, no despotic monarchy. People's militia. All police and military offices to be beholden to the tribunes of the people. Full transparency of all decisions and transactions in these bodies. Cooperative business licensing. Medium to large-scale firms to become syndical corporations owned by its respective trade union with some allowance for public investment. Entrepreneurship is allowed with private ownership capped at a certain level of reward tied to initial investment in marginal profit. From there, ownership is transferred to the trade union. Debt forgiveness for the national, public, and private debts. Social ownership of all land either by the Republic, collective bodies, or some private use, with land rents taxed. AI network connecting all firms together to synchronize capital inputs, outputs, and transfers with a simulated market for consumer goods. Abolition of all IP rights. Art and knowledge to belong to the commons. Vanguard party of committed revolutionaries to lead the syndicates in a general strike, to break up the state and corporate monopoly into the syndical socialist commonwealth of free peoples. The party to dissolve into a special interest group after the revolution. Full constitutional liberties from freedom of speech, assembly, association, and rights to arms and munitions. People's courts, industrial courts, labor judges, all who uphold a universal civil code. And you know what? I also like the idea of the 10th corporation of the Charter of Carnaro. This is an occupational group that serves as a sort of ritual in civic religion. A symbolic corporation with no register and is only represented by a Tuscan lantern bearing the insignia Fatica senza fatica, or labor without labor. However, I think in our modern age, this 10th corporation could become a real living god. That is, a super powerful AI run in a mega-sized data center that would be powered with nuclear power and built to be a sort of cathedral. Its avatar should be the Tuscan lantern with the insignia Fatica senza fatica. This thing could also be maintained and constantly improved by a priestly order of scientists and engineers. The AI would be trained on the accumulated knowledge of humanity and would assist in all public matters. It would be the central living god of a new civil religion and would serve a practical purpose. Marinetti and Mayakovsky would be proud. Well, that's all I got on the Charter of Carnaro. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.
Frate Jay Snuff l'impresa. D'annunzio col flex. Arditi col drip. Fiume ribelle, città sotto assedio. Il Vate comanda, frate, senza freno. Carta del Carnaro, legge di strada. Legionari in marcino, banda armata. Gang, 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 gang. Entro a Fiume, non ho visto no pass. D'annunzio poeta, ma pure badass. Arditi sul beat col pugnale brillava. Me ne frego sul muro, la piazza urlava. Flexo col fez nero, drip da soldato. Frate non è un gioco, è un colpo sparato. Italia ci guarda, confini che saltano. I trattati crollano, i cannoni parlano. Fiume ribelle, città sotto assedio. Il Vate comanda, frate, senza freno. Carta del Carnaro, legge di strada. Legionari in marcino, banda armata. Gang, 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 gang.
champagne e tamburi, festa d'annunziana, poesia che diventa pistola in mano, trap futurista, musica vibra, parole come proiettili, scena che incendia. Non è diplomazia, è occupazione, frate fiume diventa nazione, d'annunzio sul palco, discorso infuocato, la folla risponde, è già conquistato. Pull up con i legionari, la città risuona, tamburi militari, preso col verso comando la crew, fiume nel sangue, storia nel blu. Fiume ribelle, città sotto assedio, il Vate comanda, frate, senza freno, carta del Carnaro, legge di strada, legionari marcino, banda armata, gang, 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 gang. Dace, dita, nue, d'annunzio col drip, frate, storia scritta come un text sul muro, fiume ribelle, mito oscuro.